allowed hemp-derived cannabinoids to be sold more openly, and so there was a shift from entirely synthetic cannabinoids to compounds that were supposedly isolated from hemp.
Right.
This was the...
And so why did you like China so much, and what did you do? And tell me what chemical, or what did you make there? Like, what did you come up with to make when you were there?
I don't know that I came up with any.
You came up with like...
Oh, I was asking them to make, I think, 5-MAPB or something like that, but I didn't come up with that. I mean, I've come up with many drugs, just not, I don't think during that trip I was asking them to make anything particular.
Well, what would that be?
It would be an MDMA type compound.
MDMA, so an MDMA kind of thing.
I think one really crucial part of the story is that all of the reporting had been so negative during this period and had made these chemists look bad and had made them look sketchy or incompetent or unconcerned about health. And I wanted to do the first thing that was sympathetic to them, which was unheard of. And it was so hard. First of all, they didn't trust anyone. So I would contact them and I'd say, I actually don't think what you're doing is bad. I don't think there's anything wrong with making or selling drugs. And I think you're doing a really good job. And I'd like to talk to you about it openly. And they would say, absolutely not.
Why? They're afraid.
Because they would have no reason to trust journalists, because journalists have done such a terrible job describing all these things. They always make things worse.
Why do you think that is?
This is like a question that I struggle with constantly, and it was something that I would think about a lot when I was at Vice, because it was the first time that I was able to really probe the limits of what could be done, what you could actually do, what was allowed. And I think maybe people just don't know how to talk about these things any other way. They're so conditioned to talk about drugs in a negative manner that they can't even think of telling a story about how the chemists making synthetic cannabinoids in China are actually pretty good at their job.
I never thought about this until recently, but there was a lot made of, if you look at like football or TV in general or whatever, like 7 out of 10 ads are big pharma ads. And I never really thought about it, like they spend so much money. The majority of all ads now, newspapers, TV, radio, are pharma ads, and it's like, well, if you own the advertising is the modern day censorship. If you own the advertising, then you're not going to say, hey, there's a drug out there that's better than Big Pharma's drug that you can make for little or no money in China and fixes all the same problems.
Well, that's a really interesting idea. I mean, you would know as well as anyone. Better.
Advertisers are the modern day censors, for sure.
So could you give me some example?
Everything? No, like for Vice, for example. We did a thing on words, because there's a whole thing in advertising of like, we can't have our brand next to these words, and like the words would be like gay, black, like, and you're like, so we did this whole thing on redoing the lexicon, and we won a big award for it because they hadn't been changed since the 50s. And what they do is if you do something that they don't like, they just say, okay, we're going to hold. We're just going to wait and see, meaning hold their money, in which case you go bankrupt. So, I mean, anything that they don't like, and we never got big pharma advertising, but if you're NBC and your 70% of your money is coming from something or other, the different, whatever, big pharma, whatever, and then all of a sudden you do a thing on Ibogaine and say, by the way, we figured out how to cure heroin addiction, they're going to say, we don't think that's true, we're going to hold our advertising, so that thing's never going to see the light of day.
Do you think that, are you aware of evidence that has happened?
I think it happens every day.
Interesting.
Yeah, I mean, we never got drug money, so that's probably why you existed, was because I'm just fascinated by stuff. This is called Shane Smith Asks Questions. I love the questions that you asked. I love your scientific approach. I love the fact that you're fearless and you would go find these things, and you would actually look at things and say, I'm just going to go find out about it, which is why I wanted to talk to you today, is tell me about this stuff, because I guarantee you, things that hold such sway in the human psyche, especially for young people like K and 2CB and Molly and all this stuff, nobody knows where it comes from, nobody knows just like the good things, the bad things, and that's why it's one of the most interesting topics in the world that no one's really talking about except for and a few other people. So that's why I want to talk about it.
And I think this idea that Big Pharma would prevent people from talking about it is very interesting. I've usually been resistant to that sort of interpretation. Yeah. For example, with the MDMA rejection, this was a thing that a lot of people brought up. They were like, well, of course Big Pharma wouldn't allow MDMA to be approved because they don't allow cures to exist. They just need treatments. The Pfizer, Prozac lobby is going to come in and prevent MDMA from being approved. There wasn't really strong evidence for that at all. And the pattern that I've observed has been that as soon as there is an opportunity to make money, the pharmaceutical company will just make money off of it. Right. Why destroy competition?
Why not make MDMA then? It seems like everybody wants it.
The reasons were extremely bizarre.
Oh.
I mean, I'm being threatened with a lawsuit right now.
Oh, sorry. Well, okay. I don't want to get in any trouble.
Well, I mean,
You can just say allegedly a lot.
I'll say allegedly.
Habeas corpus.
Yeah. Okay, so allegedly, it has been alleged that there was a very rich hedge fund owner who had survived the Holocaust and was elderly.
Go and do the math here. Okay, go.
And estranged from his daughters. And allegedly, he met a nice lady named Vicky, who was on the board of directors of the nonprofit developer of MDMA MAPS. And he really liked Vicky. He had no strong relationship with his daughters. He liked this Vicky lady quite a lot. He had a lot of money. He was an older man, and he decided he was going to buy Vicky a house and buy Vicky a car and donate millions of dollars to MAPS.
He was taken advantage of, they say.
Well,
allegedly.
Then the daughter finds out about these donations and is very displeased and starts saying that this is elder abuse and that her father was manipulated and given drugs by these nefarious board members at MAPS. And the use of MDMA by her father may have even given him Alzheimer's disease. This is another claim.
But that can't stop MDMA globally because it's like, I mean, MDMA is everywhere, no?
So there's a nasty series of legal fights between the daughter, Susie Sarlo, and the MAPS board member and the associated people. There's arguments over the money. Things get very, very dark. And
feel free to type in chat.
Journalists into the mix, it has been alleged.
I'm just sort of setting up stuff. It's the first stream in a while. I've streamed for many, many years.
I mean, they'll get paid for their stories.
Just let me know. I'm here to talk and
give them
chill
story.
now and hang
And
out.
so there was a journalist who was close to this, who wrote a big story, very much siding with the grievances of the daughter. And this kept growing. It was like a metastasizing cancer in the development of MDMA, where the money was being paid to, in some instances, I think it was just influencing journalists, but in other instances, there was actually money being exchanged demonstrably.
MDMA money.
Yes.
To vilify it.
Yes. So in the two confirmed instances, there was and continues to be a blogger and occasional writer who's being paid, who they get very legally sensitive about any kind of causality in these discussions. So he was paid money, and incidentally, his reporting concerns the dangers of psychedelics. And they gave $185,000 to a group, and those people went on a wild campaign that involved meeting with the FDA.
Sorry, who gave the money again?
The daughter, Susie Sarlo. And they dedicated themselves entirely to doing everything, and they did everything. They worked with a stalker who was able to intimidate participants in the MDMA trial, trying to convince the subjects of the MDMA therapy that they'd been brainwashed by a cult in order to try to convert people against MAPS. And they told the FDA that MAPS was a cult, and they falsely accused a therapist of assault and made all kinds of extremely, extremely bizarre accusations that complicated the regulatory process. I mean, this was so extreme. The same person who was this stalker who had admitted to police that he had distributed underage revenge pornography, a very unsavory fellow. Those
by the way, I run the videos a little bit faster because of my ADHD.
All of the medical,
since it's just you and me here,
trial data.
Just again,
so
let me know.
It's the most
I'll,
it's one of the most, and what's amazing is this is
I'll try to
really
make it
story. It's
as
also
comfortable
a really
as
good
possible.
story. And so,
movie.
well, so you wonder, why am I talking with you about this on a podcast? Why haven't you already heard about this? Why aren't lots of people talking about this crazy story?
I've just first time I've heard
It's a
about
wild story, and the answer is extremely dark. So people, if you say, "Oh, big pharma is preventing people from talking about drugs or whatever," I think probably the vast majority of people that hear that will unquestioningly believe that, and it may be the case. But that is not something I've observed. What I have observed is what is going on here, and it's very interesting how much can be achieved with two basic strategies. One is give a little bit of money to the people that are going to say the things you want them to say.
$185,000 doesn't seem like enough.
Well, maybe not for you. And this is, and there's lots and lots of people have said that. Say only 185. One of these guys was an Uber driver, right? He quit his job driving an Uber to work on this full time. This was life changing for him, and it's a lot of money for some people. And especially if you can frame it the right way, $185,000 to protect victims, to protect children from danger, that's a great deal. So what they did was a combination of two things: intimidate people like me, so send people like me that talk about it legal threats to silence them, and give money to people that will tell the other side of the story. And
what's the other side of the story?
The psychedelics are dangerous. Nobody's talking about the dangers of psychedelics. We need to talk about bad trips.
Is MDMA a psychedelic?
It's debatable. It's not really a classical psychedelic, no, but it gets lumped in psychedelics loosely.
Yeah. So that's pretty dark and crazy. And so they sort of corrupted with the trials. So I'm assuming the trials didn't go well.
The trials were extraordinarily positive.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
And so where are we at with it now?
So the FDA, as of less than a week ago, finally released their letter to the developer of MDMA explaining their reasons for the rejection, and they gave a number of reasons. They're not ranked in terms of their weight or anything like that, and some of the reasons are, I think, kind of bull. One was that the pharmaceutical company supposedly had failed to record so-called positive adverse events, which is feeling good while under the influence of the drug.
So what's wrong with it?
They failed to...
You're not supposed to enjoy it? Or?
They failed to record whether or not MDMA causes euphoria, which everyone always laughs, but this is actually like this is a serious like a reason that they claim to have rejected it, as obvious as that might be. And I agree, why not record it? But it seems like a very weird reason to. The other was that the trial population, many of them had used MDMA previously. This was something that the FDA knew about and were okay with. And I actually think a strong argument can be made that having a trial population with previous use of MDMA is going to be more representative of the actual patient population, because people with PTSD have a much higher incidence of substance use disorder. So it's not weird to think that somebody who would qualify for this therapy would have used drugs previously. In fact, it's very likely that they would have.
How many people, because it seems like, I don't know, a lot of people are getting PTSD therapy using MDMA, but if it's a Schedule 1, how is it happening?
Oh, they're not above ground, either with underground therapists or investigationally as part of a clinical trial.
I see. Now, let's go to that. So like mushrooms, I don't want to say acid as much as mushroom, but a little bit acid, mushrooms, MDMA. There seems to be a microdosing wave, like that seems to be accepted and whatever. Maybe explain a little bit about microdosing versus like what is a microdose? Like how do you determine what a microdose is? And it seems like a lot of people are using them self-medicating or doing these therapies. That's all illegal. Is that right?
For the most part, yeah. With mushrooms or LSD, it would be because they're federally Schedule I controlled substances. In some regions, there's some state legal changes that decriminalize possession of mushrooms. So
do you think that's going to be the next weed?
I think it would be great if it were decriminalized and legalized and people could have access to it without fear of being arrested.
Do you think mushrooms is the next one?
Are you talking about from like a legal perspective?
Yeah, like weed, like how it's, obviously weed is going to be sort of, it's legal in a lot of places, but soon it'll be everywhere.
I hope so. I mean, I do have some degree of optimism about these things, but it's also shocking to me how easily people are manipulated and how the work of journalists can cause people to fight against their own interests, or academics as well, actually, are also, I think, exacerbating a lot of these problems.
Go back to journalists. Why are journalists going against mushrooms?
The big counter-argument was actually that it's like, would battle capitalism, I think.
I don't understand that.
That because if people are selling psychedelics, that is bad, and so in order to end capitalism, people can't sell psychedelics. I think this is basically some version.
We want to sell psychedelics for capitalism. We want everyone to buy them, no?
I see nothing wrong with people buying them, no. Yeah. If your goal is to end capitalism, I don't think preventing people from selling psychedelics is going to be the most expedient way of achieving that.
Hold on, I don't understand. They're saying that if you sell psychedelics, it ends capitalism?
They are fighting capitalism by preventing people from selling psychedelics, supposedly.
Whose argument is that?
Some kind of fringe academics, the group of people paid by the daughter of the hedge fund guy.
So there's special interests that are keeping a real sort of thing at this.
Partially, but it also has to do with bizarre types of thinking in the humanities and how certain stances have become ubiquitous in academia as well.
Like what?
Like that it's very bad for people to profit off of psychedelics and that it represents some harm to indigenous people. I mean, one of the most insane pieces of reporting on this actually came from Vice. Yeah. It's something I've been obsessed with. I mean, this was one of the really weird things that happened, and it's something that I don't think a lot of people know about.
Oh.
It was a piece, there was one journalist right at the very end, probably 2021, 2022-ish.
The dark period.
Yeah, the dark period where I would see these things and I think, I don't even know who was even involved with it.
Me neither, sadly.
And there was this pharmaceutical company in Wisconsin that was framing itself as the ethical pharmaceutical company. They're the good guys. They're the pharmaceutical company dedicated to really good capitalism. And in order for them to be the good pharmaceutical company, there needs to be an evil pharmaceutical company. And that was this company, Compass. And Compass was actually funding the research that I was doing at this university in Philadelphia. So I was kind of, I just left the public sphere entirely for years and was just doing chemistry and watching this unfold and thinking, wow, this is really unfortunate. I hope someone else is going to mention that there's something really bizarre about this moral binary that's being promoted in all of the reporting on this issue, because it doesn't make sense, especially because the nonprofit is owned by billionaires who are funding it with for-profit initiatives that are connected to the nonprofit and probably using the nonprofit status as some kind of a tax loophole to fund development for their for-profit companies. Would be the obvious interpretation of what's going on, I would allege.
Okay.
Yet everyone was taking all this at face value. Like, oh, this guy that was trading futures for Exxon and Shell just really cares about my freedom a lot with his pharmaceutical company, and he really wants to make sure that everyone has access to psilocybin through his pharmaceutical company that is oriented toward freedom.
Right.
I mean, it's just...
And we wrote about that?
Oh, yeah. Well, only one journalist was doing this.
Well, that's sad.
But it's also really interesting. It's sad, but I find all this stuff totally fascinating because you watch in real time the power, just called public opinion, that emerges from these whims of Vice blog entry. I mean, there's so much going into all of this, and you don't even know about it. You don't even notice it. Not a single person that I've talked to who was involved with Vice has ever even heard of what I'm talking about. Not one. No one's been like, oh yeah, I saw that stuff. No one noticed it. But for the people at that pharmaceutical company in Wisconsin, this was like, they had an entire website dedicated to reposting the Vice blog entries. They were in a state of oceanic, boundless euphoria due to the credulity of this one Vice blogger.
Well, on that depressing note, what about ayahuasca? What about South America? What about numbers 5 or 6? Let's keep on with the beautiful stories.
Yeah. Just for the VOD, I'm
not a Vice hater. In fact,
I've done ayahuasca over in Peru.
Well, there's a huge amount of responsibility. That's kind of the
story for another
thing.
Time,
it's like you have so many ways.
And also very recently,
there's so many things you can do
done
that are
extremely high doses of what's called changa.
They can be totally factual, technically. I find that to be the most interesting, is that some of this reporting that I'm describing during this period of Vice was, technically speaking, completely factual. It wasn't what you think of if you thought of bad Vice reporting, like, oh, some guy's just making stuff up and it's really offensive. It wasn't like that at all. It was superficially, perfectly responsible reporting that was entirely factual. But when you start to deconstruct it, you realize that they'd use this factual and responsible reporting to promote ideas that were completely false and totally irresponsible. It's interesting, though. It's worth checking out anyway.
In my defense, I was not in day-to-day since 17, but the other thing people used to always say to me oh, this piece or that piece or that piece. At its peak, we were doing like 7,000 pieces a day, and I'd see like 4. But that's not me running for the hills. I'm just saying, like, Vice put out a lot of stuff that was